Folks, and welcome. In this part, we have a really short video on organs of the endocrine system. Now, first realize a lot of these organs are also part of other organ systems, so you may already know some, and then some we covered today you will hear about again later. So the first one is the pineal gland. The pineal gland is in the brain, and if you look at this mid-sagittal section of the brain, find the corpus callosum and look at the posterior aspect of the corpus callosum. And just underneath it, but superior to the corpora quadrigemina, you can see this little round structure right there. That is the pineal gland. So there's only one. There's not one on the right and the left. There's one. It's in the midline. And so if you go straight back from here, that's where your pineal gland is. A lot of people have called it the third eye. It's not an eye. It has nothing to do with your eyes. But the pineal gland is important because we will learn later it has to do with the production of melatonin. And I want you to realize that melatonin is not melanin, which is what makes your skin darken. Melatonin is going to be involved with your sleep-wake cycles. Now, also within the brain is the hypothalamus. So if you recall, you find the bird's beak area, the bird's head, and the big head, that's the thalamus. And if you go anteriorly, the beak area is the hypothalamus. And then directly inferior to the hypothalamus is the pituitary gland, which is also known as the hypophysis. And it sits in the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone and is attached to the hypothalamus by a stalk through which there are going to be neurons connecting the hypothalamus to the hypophysis. So when we look at the hypophysis even greater blown up, first I want you to realize where we are. This is the optic chiasm. So on your left is anterior and on your right is posterior. I want you also to realize these yellow, green, and red structures. These are to represent neurons whose cell bodies are in the hypothalamus, but whose axons terminate in the axon terminals, terminal glutones, which are in the pituitary gland. So when we look at the pituitary gland, we can see here they've used a couple of different colors. We have this green area, which is anterior, this yellow area, which is posterior, and then this dark green area here in the middle. So basically we have these two lobes, the green lobe and the yellow lobe, and they're separated by this very thin medial area of it. So this posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, where you clearly can see those neurons going into, this is called the neurohypophysis because duh, neurons are going into it. Okay. So if you don't want to learn neurohypophysis, which is the word we're going to be using, then you have to write off many words, posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. And so then the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, is known as the adenohypophysis because adeno is implying that it is a glandular structure, which it is because it's going to have secretions. So adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis for the two lobes of the pituitary gland. Continuing on with our endocrine structures, we are now going to continue in an inferior direction and go to the neck area. We're not sitting over your larynx, but over your windpipe, your trachea. This is where the thyroid gland is located. And as you clearly can see on this left picture from a cadaver, there are two lobes which extend superiorly, and they're connected by a small isthmus in the middle. Now, on occasion, there is, going up from the isthmus, a skinny little lobe that goes upwards, but that is definitely not the norm, and a very tiny minority of that. And in this cross section, you can see how the trachea goes on both sides of the thyroid, how the thyroid gland goes on both sides of the trachea posteriorly to where the esophagus is located. So sticking with this cross-section pictures, I want us to look at the posterior aspect of the thyroid gland. So we are still in the anterior neck, but we are going here on the posterior aspect of the thyroid gland to find the parathyroid glands. And I think you clearly can see they're a slightly different color than the thyroid tissue itself. So humans can have anywhere between 1 to 8 parathyroid glands, but the norm is around 4, 3, 4, or 5. So most models will be showing 4 parathyroid glands. So this top picture shows just a thyroid gland with the purple structures being parathyroid glands, and this bottom picture is showing the esophagus because, as I said, the thyroid gland goes posteriorly to the sides of the esophagus, and so the yellow or orange representation is the thyroid gland, and then the beige representation are the 4 parathyroid. Continuing inferiorly into the chest now, we have an organ known as the thymus. And the thymus sits in the mediastinum, in the anterior part of the mediastinum. The inferior portion of the thymus covers where the atria, the upper chambers of the heart, are located. But the bulk of the thymus is sitting just anterior to the major blood vessels which go into and out of the heart. So this is what the thymus looks like before puberty. Now going below the diaphragm into the abdominal pelvic cavity, the first organ we would encounter is the pancreas. So the pancreas is actually a posterior structure. So in order to see it, they have cut out part of the liver as well as removed the stomach. They've cut and you have the spleen over here on the left side of the pancreas, and we have small intestine over here on the right side of the pancreas. And so the pancreas is just this very elongated organ in the upper portion of the abdominal cavity, which it starts, it starts just to the right of the midline, but then continues all the way to the left upper quadrant. Continuing inferiorly, still in the posterior portion of the abdominal pelvic area, is the adrenal gland, so named because it is adjacent to the kidneys or renal organs. So the adrenal gland, and it is a triangular structure. It usually kind of looks like a tricorner little hat sitting above the kidneys, and it's usually represented by yellow for 2 reasons. First off, there's adipose tissue that surrounds it, but in addition to the outer part of the adrenal gland, the adrenal cortex is where a lot of lipid-based hormones are made, steroid hormones, which are lipids, thus giving it a bright yellow color in real life. And so that's why they make it yellow on the models. And then the last sets of organs are reproductive organs. In the female, this is the ovary. And so we have 2 almond-shaped, almond-sized ovaries in the pelvis of the female. And the homologous organ in men would be the testes, and in the men they are external because they migrated before the baby boy was born, and the testes then are in the scrotum. So these are the organs of the endocrine system. So if you have any questions, be sure to ask your lab instructor, or better yet, your TA, who have office hours specifically for you. Thank you.